Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Phoenix Project. I'm so excited today to welcome a friend, and I've worked with her on a few things, Jazmin Steele. She's an author and a self-care advocate, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about herself. But I just want to remind everybody that the Phoenix Project is really a project that's about bringing together small business owners and entrepreneurs as we all try to figure out what's going on in this new environment and the new normal. And as we navigate through and move through to the future, working to create the future that we want instead of falling into anybody's patterns or design for us. So I know Jasmine's going to have some amazing insight for us on how we can get our mindset and our energy in the right space to create what we want. And she's done some amazing things in this pandemic that I can't wait for us to talk about. But no further ado, Jazmin, go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of tell everybody what you do and all about the world of Jazmin Steele.
Ah, Hi, everybody. Jazmin Steele here. Like Courtney mentioned, I'm an author. My first book was titled Love Incorruptible, and it was loosely based, very closely based on my real life as I journeyed through childhood trauma and an abusive relationship and then have overcome that. And that was a couple of years ago. And since then, I've continued my healing journey through speaking, putting on writing workshops, and I really just specialize in the healing of the woman who's been through trauma, and that's many of us. And so I really have my approach is just truly through transparency, and everything that I talk about, I've personally done, been through, or am currently going through. And I have a new podcast, which we're going to talk about during this call.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing that you said that really resonated for me was that when you wrote your book, which I was excited to be involved in that process, but when you wrote your book, it was really about healing through trauma. And I can say, me personally, and I can speak on behalf of everybody, that right now we're going through a shared trauma. And so I know that you've learned a lot of different techniques and tools as far as how to begin the healing process. So, can you kind of share what your process has been during this time of, like, panic and chaos and crisis and not knowing and information and fear? And there's just so many negative emotions and things that have been going on. Like, what are you doing to work through this with the healing, and what can you recommend for other people to do as well?
One of the things that I did very early on when this occurred was create boundaries for myself. Like many of us, we are dealing with a heightened sense of anxiety. So there's those people like you and I that have already dealt with anxiety. So then this comes on and it heightens it. And then some folks are dealing with anxiety for the first time, maybe. And so one of the very first things I did was create boundaries, and specifically when it came to the information that I took in. So, like social media scrolling, watching the news, even group text messages, I really was conscious about blocking out a lot of over information, because it will send you down a rabbit hole and it'll put you in this place of fear, as we all know. And so I have literally limited my social media at this point to just my post. So whenever I post something, I'll engage on that post and then I get off. So the scrolling is like down to a minimum right now. I personally don't watch the news. I haven't for years. I figured if something major was happening in the world, I'll find out via
On
text
social
message,
media, yeah. Yeah.
Facebook. I don't need to watch CNN and Fox News every day to get the up to date information. I just don't. So setting boundaries on the information that you take in is important. Even group text messages, there's times where I've either swiped and deleted the whole group, or I've even just like muted that group just because I needed to protect my mind. That was one of the very first things I did.
Yeah, that it's funny because I always say I got sick, like I got an ear infection, and think it was a blessing, because when it first started, I'm like, I became an expert, like infectious disease person. I was an economist. I was an educator. Like I couldn't get enough information because my brain instantly wanted to start solving these problems, right? There's so many problems. There were so many people hurting. Like I'm trying to solve them all. And I was going nuts. Like it was so bad. So I got sick and had to stop. And then I
Slowed you
realized
down.
I didn't have to go back, because I was like, this illness was probably the best thing that happened to me, because it wasn't the coronavirus. But yeah,
Right.
so I'm glad you chose that. I wasn't smart enough to choose it. It was chosen for me, but you're right. That was one of the most important things. So that was one, definitely filters. How about, is there anything that you've done proactively? So that's a good, barrier. What have you done proactively to kind of progress your healing during this process?
Well, I got back into therapy. One of the things that I started in my healing journey was therapy. I knew right away, like I was broken down to the core. I was getting ready to begin divorce proceedings. I had literally been abandoned by my ex-husband. He moved out of state, left me and the 3 kids with nothing. So I was at ground zero. And I knew that I needed help to rebuild my life. And so I was consistently in therapy for 2 years straight. And then I basically achieved all of my therapy goals. And I go back into regular life applying all of these new tools. Well, healing is ongoing.
Yeah.
So it's not like we check this box and then we're done healing for the rest of our
Healed.
lives. Healed, healed, because, I'm the poster child. The poster child of somebody that's healed. We're like not ever healed, because it's like an onion. You're peeling layers to an onion. So you might have peeled off one layer and dealt with those things that came to the surface, but there's always going to be more. And so that's what happened for me. It was like, and I almost felt like I had accomplished, like I was achieved in my healing, until something else came up to the surface. And I was like, shit, I didn't know that was still there.
Yeah.
So just humbling yourself in your healing journey and being gracious with yourself to understand that this isn't something that you're looking to accomplish. This is something that you're just in. You're being in this. You're open to the things that come up, open to dealing with them when they do come up. And so if you need to get back into therapy, then be open to that. And to me, this is a good time. I mean, mental health is like probably the number one industry right now, because everyone could use those services. So proactively was getting back into therapy, and then deliberately using my tools. Because another thing that happens in the healing journey is when you feel like you've accomplished and you kind of got to this next level in your healing, you might start to forget to use some of those tools. And then something will come up and slap you in the face, and it makes you remember, like, damn, I need to keep doing that stuff.
Yeah. That's like antibiotics. I feel a
Yeah,
little better.
exactly.
Stop taking the antibiotics.
Exactly. Nope, that's exactly it. That's a good analogy.
Yeah. One thing that you just said that is hitting me really hard today, not even a bad way, just something that you said, I was like, oh, is you said that we need to do things gracefully. And so I don't know, I haven't always practiced a lot of grace in this process. I feel like, you don't have time. I don't have time to work on my business. I don't have time to work on weight loss. I don't have time. And then the world shuts down and you're like, you have abundance of time. And so it's like,
right.
Why every day, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, you should be in there, making it happen. And then like some days I'm making it happen, and some days I'm not making it out the bed. And so, I don't know if that was something that you have experienced, but one thing you spoke about was doing things gracefully. Can you kind of like explain what the benefit and value is to doing that from a self-care perspective?
So, I mean, extending grace to yourself basically means not judging yourself, and knowing that whatever it is that you're feeling that day, that's just what you're feeling that day. And we don't have to look at our feelings as right and wrong. And so, like you, I've had some days that are great and I'm on it and I'm productive and I'm feeling strong. When this all first happened, I had a full-time job and 2 kids in elementary school. All of a sudden now we're all at home together.
All at home.
All at home. And my initial reaction as the caregiver is to keep the ball rolling. If I can keep things going and I can keep smiling, then my kids will know that everything is fine. And so for 2 weeks straight, I had them on like a school schedule. I even let them, exercise some leadership and create their own schedule. I'm Googling and reading all kind of ways to make this work. And for 2 weeks straight, I was just like on it, on it, on it. And I ran out of gas.
Yeah.
The human came in. Superwoman went out the window and the human Jazmin came in. And that's when I started learning about grace. That's when I started learning that it was okay for whatever the new normal looked for us, that was fine. Like there's no one to compare your life to right now.
Right.
There's no reason to do that to yourself, because we are all adjusting to this pandemic in our own unique way. We all have different triggers. We all have different stressors. We react to those things differently. Different things work for us in terms of calming us down and lowering our anxiety. We're all so unique, which is why it's so important to extend grace to ourselves right now. It's not about looking at what so-and-so is doing online with her kids and how they're doing it, because that is what works for them. You don't know the backstory. You don't know what's going on truly in that household. And so what I had to do was look at my life, look at my kids, look at what felt good to us. And if that's letting them sleep in till 10 a.m. because their bodies woke them up at 10 a.m., and then introducing a little bit of structure to the day, if that's what works for us, that's what the hell I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And some days it's my 5-year-old wants to learn, and there's other days where she wants to look at YouTube.
Yeah.
And am I gonna fight with her because I have to do a job 8 hours a day working from home, still with the mental health facility that I work for in IT? I still have 8 hours a day to commit to them.
Right.
So it's like so many of us are doing that.
I thought it was funny because, we're a voluntarily homeschooled family, so we weren't thrust into homeschooling. And so I remember being on Facebook and watching all these parents post their schedules and they're this. And I just sat back and laughed like, that's going to be short-lived. I already knew. I was like, I was like, you got to look at the body of it. Like the body of the, some days we school on Saturday. Like it is what it is. But I knew that. But I thought it was so cute. Like people had their little colored charts and they're like, here's my daily activities. I was like, this is about to be funny.
one of those people.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, I get it. We were like that, but we've been doing it for 3 years. So I was like, nah, even with no pandemic, some days are like super structured. And other days I'm like, just read. Like, can you just read today?
And being okay with that, like extending that grace again. Like this is what today's gonna look like, and this is okay.
Like staff development day, I'm over it. So, one thing that you said was that during this time, everyone is kind of dealing with this pandemic their own way, and that there's no one that they can compare to. One thing that I find interesting is that there's not even a previous version of ourselves to go back to and say, I remember that one time I was in a pandemic, that these were the things that I did so that I can learn from them and not repeat them. With that being said, I know that you've gone through a lot of healing. You talked about therapy and you talked about some of the tools. Would you mind sharing just like a couple of the tools that you do on a daily basis to kind of get you through the not so great days, or just what you do as far as maintenance goes to make sure that you're taking care of yourself?
I love that. Maintenance, breathing and writing and taking time for myself to do something I like, to make sure that I stay in a place of like lightness and that I don't like kind of slip into like feeling heavy or burdensome. So like breathing sounds so simple, but it really is something that you can practice when you don't. It's one of those tools that is best practiced when you don't need it.
Right.
So when you're just chilling, watching Netflix and just like taking a deep breath in for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts, releasing it for 4 counts. That's like a balancing breathing technique. There's all kind of different variations of how you can breathe, and deeper breathing, lighter breathing. But I like the 4-4-4 because it's easy to remember and it's all about balancing. And so when I don't need to breathe deeply, that's when I practice it. Then when my anxiety kicks in, or when I start, like, I think it's also important to like learn your cues of when you're feeling stressed or feeling anxious. Like for me, I get a pain in my left shoulder, same spot, same time. And then I also get like this knot on my back. And so whenever I feel it in those two spots, I know that my body's holding stress and tension, and I need to like pay attention to it. So breathing is a part of my maintenance. Just in the shower, when you go to use the bathroom, breathe. That'll help it release out your body a little easier too.
The one time you don't have to talk to your kids.
I'm taking a break. Close the door, lock it. Like, it's so sad as parents, we have to hide in the bathroom, but it just is what it is. One of the things we all have in common.
Yeah.
And then for me, writing, and that's also how I teach my healing, is through writing. I did a healing retreat at the end of last year, and I taught a writing workshop. And that really, I just witnessing the power of seeing people like write out their pain and just have that release as something else that I encourage people to do, even if they're not writers. And say you're not a writer. Another way, which kind of led into how my podcast came to fruition, there were times where I kind of wasn't making the time to write, but I would record audios on my phone, and I would like talk about my day, talk about what I was feeling like to myself. And I was getting the feelings out. There was no judgment there. There was nobody to tell me if I was feeling was right or wrong or too much or too little, but I would just like get it out and feel so much better afterwards. So find ways to release whatever you're feeling, and don't judge yourself for those feelings. Just like release them.
Right.
So those are the two things I would say in terms of maintenance: is the breathing and getting out the feelings in some way, shape, or form. And then for the deeper feelings, processing them. Sometimes it's just, I just need to get it out so I can just move on and get to the next thing.
Yeah. So speaking of the next thing, so I love that you just mentioned it, your podcast. So you actually created and launched something in the middle of a pandemic. So
I did.
while there was destruction and chaos all around us and fear, and you sheltered in and people are losing their jobs, you actually started something where a lot of people felt like it was their ending. And interestingly enough, the Phoenix Project also started in the midst of this. And so, and we've been talking about your podcast for a long time. So I'm excited to learn why you decided to start something new right now.
Well, as you know, Courtney, you've been a part of this journey with me for a long time. You helped me launch my t-shirt company. When I released my book, you were there through all of it. So you know some of my innermost darkest thoughts. and like all of 2017, all of 2018 was like all about the book. And then 2019 rolls around and I meet this amazing man and I fall in love. And then that kind of just like took me to like my next level of healing. And so all of 2019 was like a healing year, and a year to really just be present in my life and not like doing a bunch of stuff. And so when 2019 came around, or as 2019 came to a close, I was like, wow, I just had a whole year where I wasn't like in everybody's face on the forefront of something. And so it took some time to get to a place where I wanted to like get back out there again, per se.
Right.
And so one of the things that I did during that downtime, because I wasn't sharing things publicly on social media and doing workshops and stuff, I was like saving audios on my phone. And I had like 100 audios that I would record in the car, and they would just be thoughts or revelations or things that I learned that I knew one day I was going to share with people. I just didn't know how. And so then I had a friend of mine, I shared that exact same thing that I shared with you, that I had all these audios, and she was like, well, you know, like there's this app out there called Anchor. It's completely free. And why don't you record your thoughts on that app? And when you're ready to launch it and share with people, you can launch it then, but at least you have it in a place ready to go. And I was like, that's a good idea. Let me start saving them on there. And so that's kind of how it came about. I just put a date in mind to release it. Didn't stick to that date, but I put a date in mind because I wanted it to be natural too. I wanted, whenever I got to the place to release it, that it wasn't that it was tied to any dates or deadlines or numbers, but that it was really in alignment with what I felt at the time. And then COVID-19 happened, and everybody's on their phones now, like all day long. And even that didn't drive me initially, like, oh, take advantage, everybody's on their phone. That didn't, I was aware of that, but that didn't drive me. It was really a feeling and being in tune with myself. And I told myself I wanted to have 10 episodes ready. And so I had 8 episodes already saved in there, and I had it scheduled to release on May 1st. And but I didn't get those other 2 episodes done in time. And so forgetting that I scheduled these 8 episodes, they released on May 1st. So they were out.
And go.
That's out the bag. That's out the bag. So and again, just very similar to my book and what I'm learning, Courtney, which you've always helped me with, just staying true to myself and not comparing my journey and what I do to anybody else. And that's really what I encourage anybody, even when it comes, I know we're going to get to entrepreneurs, but it really is just about being true to yourself. Like the money, the money comes and all of that stuff comes later. But if money doesn't mean anything if you're living a lie.
Right.
And so I didn't want to put out anything that I just couldn't sleep with at night. And there's some very intimate stuff that I talk about on there. Like I released this poem that I wrote for my boyfriend. He ain't even read the poem yet. It was just a poem one night I wrote in the bathtub, and I was just talking about how his love has changed my life and took my healing to the next level. And I shared that on there. So there's people that have heard that he hasn't even heard. Well, I don't know if he's heard it, but, yeah. So that's really how it came about. It was just the timing. It wasn't necessarily that I planned to do it during the pandemic. Just the stars aligned, and I'm rolling with it because I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from it.
It's about healing, and that's what people need right now. So yep. So let's talk about that. So you've created something, and you're now a podcaster that you're adding to your plethora of different things that you offer to the world. So if you had some advice for business owners, entrepreneurs at this time, when there's a lot of uncertainty of like, what would you say about how they can move through this, whether it be the healing or creating, or what's that one piece of advice that you would give anybody out there right now that's just struggling to move on to what's next?
That's a really good question. The first thing that comes to mind is taking everything one day at a time. Because as we know, truly tomorrow is not promised to any of us. And you've heard that statement throughout your life. I've heard that statement throughout my life. And we're seeing, when you turn on the news, you're going to see the numbers of deaths taking place in the world right now. And it's like this constant reminder of how fragile our lives are, how fragile our families are, how fragile we are as human beings, how a virus can take hold of our body and we could be gone. And so the advice that I would give to an entrepreneur or anyone that's watching the Phoenix Project right now is to just literally take it one day at a time, and to know that whatever is in front of you, that's what you need to deal with. If it's something really huge that you have in front of you, just ask yourself, what's the next logical step with this really huge thing? So you don't have to conquer all of it today. By the grace of God, I still have an income through my, 9-to-5 job, but I know that there are people that don't. Right. There are people that have lost people. I had a nephew pass away in Las Vegas and couldn't be there for the funeral. You're seeing all of the world having to just adjust and submit to this pandemic. And how do we get through it? We just deal with what's right in front of us right now. Gratitude is also another huge thing, because I think that I know you've shared a lot of the rainbows that you've seen during this time, and just grateful to be alive, grateful to have my family, grateful to be able to make my house a home. I've been out of the house so many hours a week, I can actually sit down somewhere and make it mine.
Yeah, exactly.
So just really focusing on the day that's right in front of you, because why even do that to ourselves, trying to figure out tomorrow when you don't even know what tomorrow really holds.
Especially right, like that is not even a cliche right now.
No, it's not.
Like all those cliches that any other time that we would say, it's like, oh, nice quotable, nice tweetable. No, this is real life. No, I mean, you really don't know what's happening tomorrow.
No, you really don't. You really don't. You really, really don't. So it's like, what do I have right now in front of me? Okay, I'm gonna work with this. And it really teaches us to value life too. To not not saying we're not worried, but to not be so heavily, have our minds heavily wrapped around the future.
Yeah.
Because we can really see in plain sight that today is all that matters. Like you said, those cliches are hitting home right now.
Yeah. I think they call it future tripping. So like just,
Future
you know,
tripping.
I you know, and I've done that. I definitely have done that in that process. And once I realized it doesn't even matter because nobody knows what's going on, I just enjoy what's around me, and it's definitely helped. And I've found some things and some wonderful things like that. So we're about to wrap up because I know you have to go, and I definitely don't want to take up too much of your time. But I would love for people to know how to connect with you, and also where they can find this podcast so everybody can be all up in your business with this poem and get some healing. And I know that one thing that I appreciate about like your social media posts is you're always bringing it's authenticity, transparency, and positivity all at once. And that may sound a little contradictory, but that's the beauty of what you do, is kind of taking the unpolished version of life and still finding a positive spin on it, even if it's just sharing the ugliness of life and saying, but it's okay. And I think that's something that you touched on over and over. And I think all of us need that type of inspiration right now. So if you could, you know, share your social media handles and let us know the best way that we can everybody can connect with your content, I'd love for you to do that.
Sure. So the name of the podcast is Rise Up with Jazz. Rise Up is one word. I know a few people are having a hard time finding it. They were making it 2 words. So Rise Up is one word. Rise Up with Jazz. It's on the Anchor app. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. If you have an Apple iPhone, it's on your podcast app. So Rise Up with Jazz. And you can see some of my daily content on Instagram at Love Incorruptible. That's the title of my book. And you'll also find the link there in the bio to the Rise Up with Jazz podcast.
Awesome. So thank you so much for this time. I love this conversation. I needed it. It was very soothing. It was very soothing. I think we all do need to be reminded to be gentle during this process. We don't have anything to access in our past that would tell us how to act or how this is going to end up. And so, like I say, the whole purpose of bringing people together in the Phoenix Project is because I believe we're going to get through this together as a community. Absolutely. By sharing experiences and advice, and that we will rise up out of the ashes, just like the Phoenix does. So, yep. Thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to seeing your face in real life soon, hopefully.
I know, right?
When outside opens up again.
When outside opens up.
Yeah.
You look beautiful. I'm so proud of you. And I'm excited to see what all comes of the Phoenix Project. I'm so proud of you.
Me too. I hope a lot of people get a lot of help. I know people will be blessed by this conversation today. So thanks again. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.